Hey guys, it's Charles Yeager with Metal. Today we're going to take a look at a 3D scene that I previously created in After Effects, and now using SkyBox Composer we can convert that old scene now into a 360 degree video. So it's a cool way to breathe new life into old scenes that you might have created in After Effects. In order to do this, we're going to be using SkyBox Composer, which comes with SkyBox version 2. And what's unique about SkyBox Composer is the scenes that we start out with don't have to be 1:1 aspect ratio like they would be with SkyBox Creator. They can actually be in the widescreen 16:9 format, which is what most After Effects projects usually are in nowadays. So this is really convenient because now we can convert that into a 360 degree video. And the scene that we're going to be looking at today is a space scene based off one I designed 3 years ago. And even now, importing that project in and using SkyBox Composer on it, we're able to convert this flawlessly into 360. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So what I've got here is a space scene, as you can see, that I created with Element 3D. I've got some asteroids, I've got some stars, and I've got some other 3D layers kind of in the background, a galaxy here, and some nebulas, and then some optical flares. So I'll just scroll through here, and it's just a slight camera movement, kind of just selling the depth of this scene. I also have trap code shine in here, kind of giving some light rays. So again, just a standard 3D scene in After Effects, kind of using the 3D world space. So let's go ahead and go to a custom camera view so we can look at exactly what's happening. So I'm going to zoom in here. So you can see some of the stars which are done with Element, and then I have this asteroid belt right here, and the camera is actually right here in the front. And then in the back here I just have these layers that are in 3D space, again of the galaxy and the nebulas. And you'll see the trap code shine is actually shining through everything right here. And that's kind of aiming toward the camera because that's a 2.5D effect. And we're going to look at a couple restrictions with that here in just a second. And also have the optical flares in there as well. So now you can kind of get a good feel for the general 3D layout of this scene. And let's come back to the active camera view. So there are a couple things you need to note before we actually convert this scene to 360. And the main thing is any effects that are technically 2.5D as opposed to truly being 3D. So Element 3D, these asteroids, they're actually in 3D space. So they're in the true 3D space. Unfortunately, the plugin like Trapcode Shine is not. It's more 2.5D. So it's kind of in its own 3D space, but really only relative when it's viewed through its solid layer. So it's applied to like a solid or an adjustment layer. So we can only see it when we kind of view it through that layer. So unfortunately for Shine, which I'm going to select here and I'm going to turn it off, that won't really convert to 360. Again, and the reason for this is because right now we're viewing this scene through one camera, and with a 2.5D that's going to look fine, but with a 360 video we're going to have 6 different virtual cameras. So you can think of like a virtual GoPro rig. And what's going to happen then, Shine is going to react differently to each one of those cameras, and so it's not going to stitch properly. You're going to get all these different stitch lines, and so that's not really going to work on any effects that are 2.5D. Other effects that are like that are optical flares, and the glow and some of the other ambient occlusions in Element 3D also are 2.5D. Now ray traced ambient occlusion is fine, that'll work perfectly in 360, but you'll have to be careful with some of the lower render quality ambient occlusions like SSAO. However, there is a workaround for optical flares that I'll show you that I used for this project, because you can still see I have the flares on in the background. So what I did for this was, instead of having optical flares applied to a solid in this scene, what I did was I created a new composition and I just applied my flare effect to that with a black background, and I would render these out. And what I did was, you can come over here, I can show you the renders. So these are just JPEGs of different flare images that I rendered out. And then I came back to my 3D scene here and I just imported these images into the scene and just placed them in the actual 3D space. So if I go back to the custom camera view, you can see we have the flares back here in the background, and they're actually just flat layers in the 3D space, and they are in additive mode. And this way they're going to render properly with the camera rig because they're actually in the 3D space now. They're out of that 2.5D realm. And this is just a solution that I found works best when working with flares in order to avoid stitch lines. You know, there may be other ways to go about it, but this is one method I like to use because I know I'm not going to have any issues. And again, as long as your flares are facing the camera and you don't get too far off to the side of them to see it's like a flat layer, you're going to be just fine. Alright, so let's jump back over to the active camera and let's get to converting this to 360. So the first thing that we need to do in order to get started using SkyBox Composer, once you have it installed, and again, you can install a free trial version from metal.com to follow along with this tutorial. So let's go over here, and once you have that installed, go to Window and just come down here to SkyBox Composer. And that's going to open up this panel here that is dockable, and you're going to see Add 2D Edit or Add 3D Edit. Well, what we have here is just a 3D scene, so we're going to go to Add 3D Edit. That's going to pop up this dialog box. So what we need to do is input a couple settings here. Now for our first scene initially, It may default to the scene you have open. You actually want to select blank. Now in an updated version of SkyBox Composer, this may actually say create new, but in some versions right now it may just say blank, because what we're going to do is actually create a new 360 scene, and then we're going to import the other one into it, but we'll get to that step in just a second. So the comp width, we want that to be 1920 because that's what the original comp width was, 1920 by 1080. The aspect ratio is 16 by 9 in this case. And now for our camera settings, I want to use a 2-node camera. I want to use a 3D null camera controller. I don't want to center the camera because I've actually got a camera already in this composition, and it's actually going to create the 360 camera right where that one is. So that's very convenient. And we are going to be using 3D plugins, so let's go ahead and check that. And our footage doesn't have an alpha here because what I actually did was I put a black solid, just a normal flat non-3D black solid back there. And what that's going to do is just going to prevent us from having any issues with the alpha channel. Again, this is a space scene, and because I did kind of a slight color grade on this, if I go ahead and turn that off, you're going to see what's going to happen here. If I just move this out of the way, you can see how the color grade's not applying because we have that alpha back there. So if you want to get around that, just an easy way is just apply a black solid, solid black, and now the color grade is going to work properly, and it'll actually work in this case with the 360 video. That's just an extra technique if you want to use it. Alright, so I'm just going to select Add 3D Edit now. And SkyBox Composer is going to do its thing, and what it's done, it's actually created a virtual scene right here, but we can't see anything just yet. We have another step we need to take. So if we come over here, we can see Edit 1, that's our current edit. You're going to see Properties, so let's go ahead and select that. And now we can name our new 360 scene, so I'm going to go ahead and name this Space 360. And again, we are using 3D plugins, and now we can select Import 3D Comp. So this is how we're going to import our previous old 3D scene into this 360 scene. So I'm going to select that, and now where it says none, I'm going to select Space Scene. That was my original scene. I'll just select Import 3D Comp. And now that quick and easy, our previous After Effects scene is now in 360 space. Now it looks a little bit different, obviously, and I'll show you why that is. It's pretty cool, but if I hit C here, I can go ahead and look around the scene. Take it just a second to update there. So you can see we're looking around the space scene. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control-Shift-H to toggle off the outlines of everything. That way we're not distracted by that every time I move the camera around. But now you can see we actually are in the 360 space. I can actually turn completely around. You can see I can see the front of this asteroid, the stars, and everything else in the background, so that's really cool. And everything looks proper. Now one thing you may notice, again, is the field of view looks a little different, and the reason for this is, so with a 360 camera like this, our field of view currently around the composition here, it's a 15mm camera. And in the previous scene, we didn't have a 15mm camera, so let's go ahead and look at this real quick just to demo this. So in this scene here, if I select the camera settings, you can see we're using a 24mm. Now let's go ahead and look at what happens if I change this now to a 15. Look at that. Now we have the exact same field of view as we do in the 360 edit. So let's go ahead and select that back again, right here back to the edit we were on. So now you can see it's the same view. So again, our camera is in the exact same place, which is really cool. You'll also notice that our color grade actually came through as well, so I can go ahead and select that and turn it on and off, which is pretty unique. And if we come down here and look at the composition, you'll see it created a 30-second long composition. If you want it to be longer, you can just stretch your layer lengths out here all the way to the end. In this case, I'm just going to leave it right around the 10-second timeline, because I think that's really all we need to demo this scene. Alright, so now let's go ahead and take a look at the equirectangular output from this 360 scene. Now, when you run SkyBox Composer, you're going to get an edit composition and an output composition. Don't actually select the output composition from this view right here. You always want to select it from the properties box over here. So if I select this and we select Open Output Render, so I'm going to select that. And it's going to run just a little bit of process, and now it's going to open up the equirectangular output. So now you can see this is a full 360 output here. You can see how it kind of distorts at the top and the bottom there a little bit, and we'll look at this a little closer a little bit later. But the reason you always want to select it over here, even if you want to go back to my edit, for example, I can select it right here. You'll see it kind of runs a little process. But the reason for that is, think of it like SkyBox Creator when you would refresh the script. Well, essentially each time you click that, it's refreshing. So it's going to update to make sure there's no issues and to make sure you're always seeing the updated version. So that's just a good way to play it safe, especially when we start animating some stuff like we're going to do now. So if I come down here to my camera, I've actually got my camera controller with a null object. Let's go ahead and move this camera through this scene now and actually kind of explore the 360 area. So I'm going to move back to the very beginning of the composition. I'm going to hit P for position there on the keyboard. Let's go ahead and make a keyframe, and let's move down to about 10-second mark here. And let's go ahead and move through in Z space. So if I just pull this forward, you can see we're actually moving through the scene, which is pretty cool. And so right there looks pretty good. So I can just move through the timeline here and we can see that we are in fact moving through the 360 space. And every time I say 360 space, I'm actually referring to the 360 area of this scene, but it's also a space scene, so anyway, that works. So now let's go ahead and go to output render now. I'm going to select that. And you see it's going to open back up our output, and what it's doing is refreshing to kind of implement that keyframe data we just applied. Alright, now it's finished. Now if we just click through here and scroll to make sure it went through, we should see this update with the camera moving through the scene. And there we go. So now you can see as I click further down the timeline, the asteroids are moving past the camera, and so these would be in the back, and this is facing forward. So now you can see how quick and easy it was to take a previous After Effects project that was in 3D space and convert that using SkyBox Composer into a 360 video. And that really is all there is to it. So if we want to go ahead and output this 360 video now, all we need to do is go to the render queue and then just select that output composition up here that SkyBox created. I'll just drag and drop it down here, and then we can implement our settings. So in this case, we'll just do QuickTime file, photo JPEG quality at 95%. You can do H.264 or output it to media encoder if you'd like, and just name your file and then click render. And that's going to export your equirectangular 360 video. So again, I can't stress enough how much easier this is now using SkyBox Composer. It's part of SkyBox version 2. Definitely give it a look.